she starts to harness him and to weep. A weeping bride is not what you expect. It's supposed to be a happy occasion. And it becomes a very unhappy occasion. And she now uses a very strong argument. And she says, you have made a riddle to my people. I'll read it in English. verse 16. ותף כאשת שמשון עלה בתומר רק שנתני ולא אהבתני החידה חדת לבני עמי ולי לא הגדת. And she says to Shimshon, you really hate me and you don't love me. You asked my countrymen a riddle and you didn't tell me the answer. Which means that the national tension between Israelites and Plishtim comes into the wedding chamber. And she says, you don't trust me. You hate me because I'm a Plishtit. You don't tell me the riddle because you don't trust me. What could Shimshon do? If he really wants her, he will tell her the solution. He will trust her. So they exert power more and more every day. Now on the fourth day probably she breaks down, or he breaks down and he tells her the riddle. And on the seventh day they wait now that there won't be a visual link between her knowing the riddle and them knowing the riddle. So 3 days after they got the answer, they wait some half an hour before the seventh day, and they say nonchalantly, Ma matok midvash ume'az me'ari, what is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion? Very simple answer. And he answers them in a biblical verse, לולא חרשתם בעגלתי לא מצאתם חידתי. If you wouldn't have plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have found heifer. You wouldn't have found my riddle, which says, I know how dumb you are. I know that the riddle is unfair. I know that you couldn't find it yourself. And I know through what channels you got the answer. But like Yiftach from our first lesson, he is a gentleman and he won't touch them. He made a promise and he will fulfill the promise. So what is he doing? He goes to Ashkelon and kills 30 Plishtim and takes off their clothing and sends them to a washing machine. And they iron them nicely, and here he comes again and delivers the prize which he offered them. Now you have to make a decision whether it sounds that he was using the pretext of the marriage and of the riddle in order to turn the wedding into a warfare, or whether this is God's doing. Anyway, the end of the chapter is, I read the verse, and he stripped them and gave the sets of clothing to those who answered the riddle, and he left in rage for his father's house. He goes home. And Samson's wife then married one of those who had been his wedding companions, which is quite ironic. So her father is marrying her off quite quickly. You know, it's a great shame. A woman, newlywed, is left by her husband, so he marries her off to one of the 30 people. And in Hebrew it says companions and friends, mere'eu. It has a double meaning, which says great faithful friends they were not, because one of them was prepared to take the deserted wife of Shimshon. So let's continue, and we are now in chapter 15. And a year later, Vahi miyamim, in the days in the season of the wheat harvest, Shimshon arrives with a kid. I believe that Rembrandt helps us very much to understand biblical narrative. He had a wonderful understanding for the situations which are depicted, and he devoted one of his most wonderful paintings to Shimshon arriving after this time, at the harvest time, arriving at the house of the father of the first wife of Shimshon, and he has a kid here, not flowers, you know. You bring a kid which is sitting here, and the father is standing behind the trisim? Shields? No. Shutters. Standing in a house, in a stone house, standing at the window, holding with his two hands the shutters of the house, so that if Shimshon gets wild, he will close them immediately. And Shimshon is holding up his fist, which shows us that he is threatening him. This is the situation. Go home and look at this wonderful painting. Anyway, the poor father says to him, I was sure that you had taken a dislike to her. You see, he studied, his BAs is from Oxford. A dislike to her in Hebrew says you hate her. I don't know why they dilute the biblical style. Kisanos neta. I was sure that you really, really hate her because you have discovered what she did to you. So in English he says, you have taken dislike to her, so I gave her to your wedding companion, but her younger sister is more beautiful than she. Let her become your wife instead. Now, what do you say to this? Only grown-up people can use this unromantic language. He loves this particular person. And now his father and mother says, take a Jewish girl. And this father of hers says, oh, I have a younger daughter which is much more attractive. But he loves the other woman. And he gets infuriated by this suggestion. I believe that the beauty of the story is that he really loves this woman. Anyway, he doesn't let him approach her because she now belongs to somebody else. And now, as you know, he takes 300 foxes. Could you imagine how much time it takes to hunt 300 foxes and put them in cages and feed them? And when you arrive at 300, you make pairs of them. And in the middle, you bind their tails, and in the middle you put a torch. And since the poor animals run in opposite direction, the torch is held upright. And now he's doing what you do in modern warfare when you throw across the border, how do you say, ptsatzot tav'era.
Flares?
No. This is not English.
Incendiary bombs.
Oh, incendiary bombs. Ptsatzot tav'era. You stand here in Lebanon and you send your missiles. He remains in Israeli territory, and he sends 150 pairs of foxes. And this is a time of Ktsir Chitim, of the harvest at the end of the summer, after Pesach, between Pesach and Shavuot, or rather no, after Shavuot, and everything is dry, and the whole land of the Plishtim is burning. This is his revenge. His personal revenge. Not because he fights the Plishtim who subjugate his people. No, he's infuriated because they have taken his wife from him. And it's a personal warfare of one man. He doesn't build up an army. He doesn't fight for his people. No. He takes revenge for what is done to him. And he says it very explicitly. Where does it say it? And the Plishtim asked, I read verse 6, who did this? And they were told it was Shimshon, the son-in-law of the Timnite, who took Samson's wife and gave her to his wedding companion. So they were sure that in Philistine terms, this is a just reward. This is a no, there's another one. Retaliation, right? What you have done to me, I do to you sevenfold. So you have taken my wife. You have threatened her that her house will be burned down if she doesn't find out the riddle. So I put fire on the whole land of Plishtim. And they realize that this is a just retaliation. And what do? Therefore, thereupon the Plishtim came up and put her and her father to the fire. You see, this is a typical retaliation. They take his wife, he sent them fire. Now they kill his wife with fire and her father. He says, you killed my wife. So he says, let me do it once again. ויאמר אם תעשון כזאת כי אם ניקמתי בכם ואחר אחדל. This must be translated into English. If that is how you act, I will not rest until I have taken revenge on you. And he gave them a sound and thorough thrashing. This is a nice English expression, I believe. In Hebrew it says shok al yarech, which is quite difficult, but it's some kind of an idiom. So they translate it nicely and says, we don't get details, but once again he retaliates. And now he understands that he cannot be accepted by the Plishtim and that he endangered his own people. So he goes to Beit Shemesh, to a very huge cave, and there are a lot of caves in this area, and he hides there as a lonely person. Hopes to be forgotten or not to be discovered. And the Plishtim arrive with a huge army, more than 1,000 soldiers, very well armed, and they threaten the people of Judah. You see that Shimshon and the Plishtim have the same notion of collective responsibility. You do me harm, I kill other people of your people. As if all the people who owned these fields had done something to do with the fire which they put on the house of Shimshon. Now the Plishtim threaten the tribe of Yehudah because they want to retaliate what Shimshon has done to them. And the elders of Yehudah, of Judea, come to Shimshon and say, what have you done to us? Here you say that you see that they don't regard him as fighting for them. Let me read it in Hebrew. וירדו 3,000 איש מיהודה, 3,000 people from Judea came to this cave. ויאמרו לשמשון, הלא ידעת כי מושלים בנו פלישתים? You know that they are ruling us. ומה זאת עשית לנו? What, are you crazy? ויאמר להם, כאשר עשו לי, כן עשיתי להם. You see, this is a slogan of retaliation. Whatever they have done to me, I have done to them. They deserve it. And they say, we have come to arrest you and to hand you over to the hand of the Plishtim. And Shimshon say, take an oath that you won't touch me. And ויאמרו לו, no, we will only make you a prison and hand you over to the Plishtim. And now you see this picture, there's a huge army standing there, and Shimshon is bound by 2 ropes and is approaching them only by himself. The Judeans don't fight,